أهلا وسهلا مرة ثانية. Okay, can you believe it? We have now arrived at our final measure, and this is measure 4. We won't be doing 9 because 9 is very uncommon and you don't really need to know it. And we've saved 4 for last, so here's our goal today. By now you know this goal and you're not the least bit intimidated by it. Now, why do we save 4 for last? Well, it's because everything we're going to see in 4 combines things you've seen in the previous measures. 4 can also be the most confusing one. It's the easiest one to mistake for something else, and so that's why we do this. But however, if you pay attention to what we're about to say here, to the very few points we have to make, this will become a breeze. And we just love breeze, don't we? So, I know you're very confident and you want to just jump right into this. So, here is our basic pattern for measure 4. Isn't it great? Okay, what have we done? All we've done is added an aleph to the front of the root. Now that's nothing new. We've added alephs in 7, in 8, and in 10 as well. The difference here, if you notice though, this aleph has the hamza on top. Why? Because it is holding up a feta, a short vowel sound. In the others it was a kasra, an I, as in infa'il, istafa'il, ifta'il. This one is an a. Not a big deal. Remember, of course, that the aleph itself doesn't have any value. It's just there as a placeholder, but of course that is the only thing that will be written. Okay, so let us begin here with the past tense, because the past tense should be very easy. There should be no mistaking this. All we're going to do is put the normal endings on here. Now, if you notice from the basic pattern, there is also a sukoon over the fa. This is probably the most important thing to remember. Okay, this is f'al, not fa'al. Right? Don't put an extra syllable in there. That's probably the biggest mistake. Why? Because this is not going to be written. The short vowels are not going to be written normally. So you just have to know that this is always a sukoon. By the way, right, every measure where we have put an aleph in the front, it has always been a sukoon on the first consonant, right? In fa'ala, if ta'ala, is tafala, right? It's always been that way. So I mean, just remember that for every one of them. So let's look at the past tense. Right, this should be the easiest because notice here I'm showing the ana form, right? But it'll be the same for all of them. No matter what we add here, tu, ta, ti, na, whatever it is, we keep the aleph in the front. Remember, this works just like every other measure we've seen so far. The aleph will stay as long as we don't add anything onto the front. Okay, so my point is, if you encounter an ending, a past tense ending, and an aleph on the front, well, you know that has to be 4. It can't be measure 1 because there's no reason this would still be here on a measure 1, right? Too many letters. So when you see both, we're dealing with measure 4. So this makes the past tense rather easy. Notice the number of syllables though. Right? 4 has the same number of syllables as 1, not the same number as 2 and 3. What do I mean by this, right? F-al-tu, F-al-tu, F-al-ti, F-ala, and so forth. Not F-al-tu. Okay? And why is that? Because, remember, measure 1 would be fa'altu. Fa'altu, fa'altu. Alright, this is important to note. So let's look at all the patterns just so you get used to them. By now these should be pretty simple. All we're doing is adding the standard endings to the stem, remembering that sukoon on the first consonant. So, ana, why don't you say them? Ana, afaltu, anta, afalta, anta, afalti. I mean, anti, afalti. Remember, they have to rhyme. Huwa, afala. Hiya, afalat. Antum, afaltum. And nahnu, afalna. Right? Very, very nice. Same patterns. So you're saying past tense. Hey, this was no problem. This was easy. Okay, it gets a little bit more complicated in the present tense, but by now it should be nothing surprising. Well, what's going to happen to that aleph? Remember, it's a weak letter, so that means what? It runs away whenever anyone else shows up. So in the present tense, the aleph is going to go away. Look, the aleph went away in all the other measures, in 7, in 8, in 10. It always goes away. You know this. Okay. Notice our vowels here are the same as in 2 and 3. So this is why 4 is kind of a hybrid. It has some stuff from 7, 8, and 10. It has some stuff from 2 and 3. Why do I say this? Because probably the most important thing to remember here is this what? This oo. Because why? Here, the present tense of measure 4 is easily confused with measure 1. Here they are. Well, here we can see they're different, but what's going to happen? In normal writing, these vowels aren't going to be here. In normal unvoweled writing, i.e. what you will find on every newspaper and website, you're not going to be able to tell these two apart. They will look the same. However, in listening, you can tell the difference. What is the big difference? It's the vowel oo versus a. Also, this is very important for you when you're pronouncing. If you haven't gotten this down yet, if you don't remember that it's measures 2, 3, and now 4, 2, 3, and 4, those 3 in a row have the oo sound. If you don't get that straight and you just pronounce these any which way, then no one's going to know what you're trying to say. So notice the difference. Yafal, yufil, and this is always a kesra. Yufil. Okay, the u. You hear the oo. Whenever you hear that oo sound on the first letter, you know it's not a 1. This is the only way you're going to be able to tell. Now, of course, in writing, that's not going to be there. So it means they will look the same in the present tense. Hey, therefore, you may have to look up a word under both 1 and 4. Now, when we get to the meaning, you'll see that's not such a problem because they're closely related. But we need to get this down. So meaning, we may not always be able to tell when it's 1 or 4, but we want to certainly be able to tell in those instances where it is possible. Okay, so here we have the Rocky challenge. Is it Rocky 1 or Rocky 4? Okay. So we have 5 words here. Some of these are 4s and some of them are 1s. And I'll tell you in every case you can tell. In every one of them you can make a clear distinction. So let's go through on your own and tell us which one of these are 4s. No, don't fast forward. Go through and actually do it. Is it 4s or 1s? Okay, how many 4s do we have? All right, you should have 3. Okay, how do we know? All right, let's look at this one. Balagna. Well, what is it? Is it past tense? Of course, it's past tense because of the ending, a na ending. So it has a past tense ending, so that means if it were 4, it would have an aleph in the front. It does not have an aleph. There's no reason the aleph would have dropped off, so this is a measure 1. Unlike this one, notice this one. Aslamtu. Here we have an aleph in the front and a past tense ending. That's 4. There's no reason for this to be here unless this is measure 4. Okay, great. Now let's look at these two, present tense. Here we have tu'rif versus yashrob. Well, notice how similar these two would sound. The rhythm, the number of syllables is the same, but what's the difference? Here in u, tu versus ya. And again, this is going to be the only way you can tell. So if you were listening to these, this one's a 4, this one is a 1. And you can be absolutely sure of that. Why? Okay, because this is 2 syllables. Yashrab. And it begins with a ya. That's a 1. This one is 2 syllables. Tu'rif. And so therefore it's a 4. Okay, you hear that oo sound means it's 2, 3, or 4. But remember, 2 and 3 have an extra syllable. Okay? So, and a 3 will have an aleph there, right? But this is not tu'arif, right? Or tu'arif. No, it's tu'rif. And lastly, this one. Now, you're looking at this. Okay, this one, this is in the past tense. This is a measure 4, right? Because it's got this at the beginning. Now, What if this were present tense of the measure 1? Well, it would look the same way. So this one could be, if this were in the present tense, this could be 4. So this one is somewhat ambiguous, but the other 4 you can absolutely tell. Okay, so let's go on. All right, so far we've told you how to tell the difference between 1s and 4s. Most of the time you can tell. In some cases it will be ambiguous. Now, how would we tell the difference? Well, we could tell the difference whether this was in the past tense or the present tense. All right, if the sentence began with amps, akbala, okay, so that's past tense, this is a 4. If this is talking about present tense, and we could tell by the context, then this would be 1. Okay, so meaning most of the time you will be able to tell, but in some cases you won't, and hey, that's where you have to put Hans to work. Now, you say, this is all great, we haven't talked about meaning. Well, let's talk about meaning. Unfortunately, measure 4 does not have one consistent meaning, and this is another reason we leave it to the end. So it can mean a lot of different things. And so that's why with 4, again, I would look them up and get used to it. Sometimes the meaning of 4 is identical to 1. Okay? Sometimes 4 is causative, meaning it's identical to measure 2. Well, that's great. Oftentimes, it is a more polite version of measure 1 or 2, meaning it'll have the same basic meaning as one of these two, but it's more polite or more higher level. Okay, so you see the meaning is often very close. So in many cases, we say you can't tell the difference between 1 and 4, but oftentimes there really isn't a big difference in meaning. Okay, so what's some examples? You say, I need an example of this. All right. Here is a root that I think you all know, jalasa. Jalasa is, of course, to sit, ejlis, right? To measure 1, that's to sit. Okay, I'll just throw this in. Jalasa, okay, this is, of course, measure 3. Measure 3 is what, reciprocal. So jalasa means to sit with someone, to sit with them, talk with them, accompany them, so forth. Okay, measure 4, ejlasa, ejlasa. Okay, here, this is causative. 1 is to sit. Measure 4 is to seat someone, but this is a polite version. Like you to seat someone formally, offer them a chair, offer them a seat. Right? This is a nice way of saying that. So it's causative and it's also very polite. Okay. Here's a word you probably know, kareem. Kareem means honorable, generous, noble, and so forth. Kareem is a very nice name. So therefore, the measure 1 would be karama, to be honorable. This verb is not used really much at all. You use the adjective normally, but that's no problem. So if we come across akrama, akrama would be what? Okay, now think about this. If 1 is to be honorable, akrama is to honor, to venerate, to respect. Okay, so you can see how it's, again, it's causative and it's also polite. And so this is sort of the hang of measure 4 words. But again, you may have to look them up because of the variance in meanings. But anyway, now with your experience, this should be no problem, right? Of course. Okay, so you say, well, what? We still have all the other patterns to go over. All right, these are going to be easy. The masdar is the same pattern as we've seen recently in 7 through 10. What did we do? We stuck a we stuck an aleph, right? Stuck an aleph in there. Same as measure 7, measure 4. We stick an aleph in there. Okay, a little technical difficulties. We don't want you to see all our secrets. Okay, we stuck an aleph in between these last 2 root letters. Notice this also becomes a kesra, but that was the same. Remember, infa'il, ifta'il, istafal. Okay, so just this, in this case, the masdar is exactly like the way we form for 7 through 10. So if'al, if'al, if'al. Okay. Participles, again, will be formed the same way as we've done them for every measure except 1. So this should be very simple. All right. Muf'il, muf'al. Active with the kasra, passive with the fatha. And this should be very simple. Now I know you're saying, wait a minute, I need one example to wrap this all up so I can remember measure 4. Well, here's a great example of a measure 4 in all the different forms, and it's a word, or it's a family of words that you already know, so it will help you remember these. Okay, this is a measure 4 verb, aslama. Again, remember, it has to have this sukoon here. Aslama. Aslama means to submit, but you probably know it better from its use as, what's it look like? Right, Aslama means to become a Muslim, and you probably learned from way back that Islam means submission. Well, this is what it means. So Aslama, it means to submit, but as it's used, it almost, well, it always means this. So if you say Aslamtu, that means you became a Muslim. So just be aware of that. Okay, so that's not so common. What I want to know now is, what is the Masdar? What is the Masdar of this form? Think back to the Masdar pattern. Okay, so plug in our letters, and the Masdar of this verb is what? Islam, right? Islam, from ifal, Islam. Now you already know this word, right? This is probably one of the most common Arabic words everybody knows. So Islam, this is an easy way to memorize the measure 4 Masdar. Just remember, Islam is a measure 4 Masdar. You know the root is salama, right? Probably the most commonly used root in Arabic, from peace, ma salama, salam alaikum, and so forth. Great. Okay, so we know that. Now we want to know the active participle. What is one who does this? Someone who yaslam. Someone yuslam to Islam. What is this person? Think about it. The active participle, Muslim, right? Muslim. And again, you know it's Muslim, not Muslim, not Muslim, not Muslim, right? You know this word already, right? You know all these words already. So just remember, this is the active participle of this. This is the Masdar of this. So this is an easy way to remember measure 4. Remember these words that you already know, and then you will be all set. Okay, so can you believe it? We have now completed all the measures. How does that make you feel? I know. Yeah, we share your enthusiasm. So I know you'll want to go out and celebrate with a friend, and they will share your joy. Okay, so on behalf of my good friend Rusty here, I want to congratulate you, Mabruk, on making it through the 10 measures. We will see you next time, inshallah. Ma salama.